So some of the best sellers, well, obviously the Dischord, the Minor Threat and Bad Brains was just a constant seller for us. We did a Dischord order every week, without fail. It was just, a constant, steady seller. As far as T-shirts, like Cure and Smiths, and it was sort of the Sex Pistols, never mind the Bullocks, Clash shirts, records, it was just the steady ones, like, at that point, like Black Flag, Circle Jerks, a lot of the other British punk bands like Exploited, GBH, UK Subs, Crass, Subhumanz, so many of those bands, like Siouxsie and the Banshees, like in the Bunnymen, when you combine them all together, they were all steady sellers. I went to a lot of shows. I'd go to shows, a couple times a week back then, and most of the people at the shows were wearing band T-shirts, so the assumption was they had to buy them somewhere. So it's kind of from seeing all the fans at the shows wearing the T-shirts, I would go and carry as large a selection as possible. So we did have a lot of British imports that were hard to find, especially in DC. So starting probably like in 1985, I used to go to England at least twice a year. So we had good friends of ours had married someone who lived in England, so I had a free place to stay. They were cheap, inexpensive flights, and the pound was really cheap. So I would just go there and I had to dig to find wholesalers, but off of Carnaby Street there was a lot of button or badge wholesalers, and I'd go and get T-shirts there, all the punk T-shirts, and they had in England, like it was just huge. Like if you were into the Smiths, you couldn't find a Smiths T-shirt. They had like 20 different designs. So I'd go and I'd actually found like the warehouse where they were printing up the T-shirts, and usually you have to take the tube to a bus and walk like a mile. But I'd come back with T-shirts, bondage belts, punk clothing, dresses. I'd go and get the used punk 7-inches, and they were about paying like £1 for UK Subs, Exploited, Siouxsie and the Banshees, and so I literally have like a duffel bag, and the one time I came in, it weighed over 100 pounds, and back then you weren't charged extra. It wasn't as for each baggage, but it would literally just be filled with metal badges, metal studs, bullet belts, and T-shirts, just a little bit of everything. Aside from the fact they were inexpensive, stuff was available. All those bands you couldn't get in the States, as I say, like Cure, Joy Division, Bauhaus, even U2, Siouxsie and the Banshees. They had a lot of really nice, big, full, 6-color prints, really incredible artwork. So they're really nice. You just couldn't even get them. So I'd bring those back, and obviously in the store, people were really excited to find quality merchandise that you couldn't find anywhere. I had gone to England before I'd opened the store, and had bought things for myself, 7-inches. I remember there being a lot available. So I think when it was my wife's best friend got married and moved over there, and like she said, we have offered to put me up, and I was finding a lot of stuff. I was seeing stuff in mail order catalogs that all came from England. So then I kind of probably just put 2 and 2 together, and maybe I should try going over there. So, which I did, and did it for about 3 or 4 years, a couple of times a year, and then it just started getting more expensive and harder to find. And it was easier at that point to find stuff in the States. Initially when I went, you just couldn't find that stuff anywhere, and it was too prohibitive to mail it over from England. So in end of 1989, we moved just a block down the street to M Street. We were selling more Doc Martens, and now we're selling Vans, Converse shoes, so there just wasn't enough room really for the product mix in that store. We were trying to expand the record selection, and then CDs were starting to come into factor. That was by 1989. So we moved down the street, about 6 times larger store, and that made a big difference. So we did have a lot of contact with local bands, and so that they would shop in the store or sell the music in the store. Dave Grohl, when he was in Mission Impossible, he bought his first demo cassette for us to sell. Local musicians would come in, sell their records, and hang out. So like Amanda Mackay, she started her own label, Sammich Records, and we helped finance the Swiz record, and she'd come in and put that out. Musicians, local bands would come in and out through the store. Members of Swiz, Nation Ulysses, Dag Nasty, Shudder to Think. Those were the bands that were at the mid-'80s, late 80s were really popular, and a lot of them would come in, and we would certainly buy some of the records directly from them or from many other labels. Like Dante from Iron Cross had a box full of Iron Cross 7-inches, which were starting to get more valuable, but he would come and trade them for blue hair dye. And the rule was I couldn't sell them for more than the hair dye. So I had to sell those for $7 each, which is a really good deal these days. Sav, the singer from Iron Cross, would hang out in the store. When he moved to England, he helped finance his trip by selling his records in the store. So a lot of touring bands would come through, and we would buy their merchandise. The band Warzone was starting to get big, and they had just put out their limited edition green vinyl 7-inch, which is now a very valuable record. So they traded a stack of those for a couple American Skinhead t-shirts, which they wore on the cover of their second album, Open Your Eyes. The Descendents were touring through, so Bill Stevenson came and sold us merchandise. And then he said, if you want to keep buying, at that time we couldn't find a lot of the bands, we couldn't find their merchandise. And he just said, all right, well, if you want more, just call my mom. So we would, every couple months, we'd call Mrs. Stevenson, and she would send us Descendents merchandise.